Becca Beach theory.
Whoa, insert clapping noise here.
I'm super excited for today's episode. I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite memories from my teenage years. Most of these podcasts from our childhood are really my teen years because that's where I have the most like experience. You know what I mean? Like memories.
Yes.
That's when I did the most because up until that point it was literally just like
what?
wake
Okay,
up,
you're talking.
eat, go to bed.
Oh, you're talking about experiences from when you were a teen. I feel like I had such different experiences. It's almost like where does my side of the story fit in, you know? But I could just say what my version of what you're going to be talking about camping today, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just say what I did camping.
Well, it makes sense. But everything I'm doing is kind of like chronological as I'm getting older.
And I'm just throwing stuff in on my take on what I did that has to do with what you did.
I think the difference between us is you have like 10 times as many stories that you could tell. Because you have like a bigger brain with more memory space.
I mean, it's true.
And if I don't get this stuff recorded now, I'm going to forget it.
Oh.
So,
and we don't want that. So.
And you never forget anything.
It's true.
So I remember my very first camp out that I went on. And I was 11 and I was like almost going to be 12 soon. And they're saying, you know, you're not supposed to go on a camp out until you turn 12.
Yeah, they said that with me, with young women's too.
But because I was like 2 weeks away from turning 12, they let me go on the camp out anyway.
I didn't get to go. I was so close. I was so close. I was like a month away or something like that. And they were like, well, you're going to be in Young Women's, but you're not in Young Women's yet, so you don't get to go. And I was just like, no! It was very sad.
Yeah, but we went camping at a beach. That was like normal for us.
What a weirdo.
I think half the campouts we did were at a beach somewhere.
Have you never heard of a mountain before?
Not in Florida, nope.
Okay. That's true. In Florida, there's trees.
I remember
trees
as I was
everywhere.
packing for the camp out
Beaches.
with my tent and my backpack and everything, I remember my sisters were like, you have to bring candy on campouts. And I was like, okay. Because
have to.
when they went to girls' camp, I guess that was like a thing. Girls' camp.
They brought
like,
candy.
You have to bring candy.
Bring treats. It's
you
fun.
You bring treats. And so I was like, okay. So I went and got that was like the first time I ever like really planned for like a camp out and like bought cool stuff.
Yeah.
Because literally every camp out after that, it was just kind of like, just throwing a blanket, I should probably bring some clothes. Like it was just very haphazard. But that first camp out, I was like, I got to be prepared. I got to have everything that I could possibly need for any situation. And yeah, I overpacked way too much.
I did the exact same thing because I went to girls' camp when I was 12. And they sent us a list of things that we needed. They were like, you have to bring rope and a knife and this and that. And I did not miss a single thing on that list. And I probably brought even more stuff than what the list said. And didn't use like 80% of what I brought.
And that was
I definitely ate the candy though. And I got treats and I was so happy with that.
I think every camp out after that first camp out, we would always get a list like, hey, you should bring these things. And I almost didn't bring any of those things because I never used them. Like I'm not going to use a compass, unless we're doing an orienteering class. I'm not going to use this
Orienteering?
Compass. Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Orienteering?
Is that when you just go around with the compass?
Yeah, so orienteering, you get a map and a compass and you have to, latitude and longitude, and you have to figure out, I'm going to get from here to here.
Because you're orienting yourself.
Exactly. That's called orienteering. There's actually a merit badge.
Never heard. Well, of course, now because you have that merit badge, probably. That's how you've heard that word. Maybe.
Orienteering always frustrated me because I thought I was doing it right every single time, and without failure, I was always off.
Well, throw that out the window because when you
I just have my cell phone.
No, throw it out the window because when you're orienteering underneath the water, you're perfect at it.
Thank you.
And you use a compass for that.
That's true.
And I always looked to you like, I hope we know where we're going. Because it's scary. Scuba diving is scary. That is one of the biggest fears I've ever faced in my life.
You're so brave.
Yeah, I am.
Are you ready to do skydiving? So
I don't know about land.
and there's a couple other memories
see.
I have from that very first camp out. I remember me and all the other boys. I don't remember them being rude to me on this camp out for some reason. I don't remember anybody being rude at all. But I remember going and playing out in the water, and we were having like a mud fight, and everybody was throwing mud at each other.
That sounds like boys.
And I tripped and I fell and I got a scar on my leg right underneath my knee. You can't see it very well anymore because it's from a long time ago. But there was like 3 scrapes. Yeah, you can see it right there.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Do you see that line?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a scar.
Ouchie.
So I had 3 of those because that
was me kissing it better.
Thanks. I got my leg scratched up on some coral, and then it was bleeding really bad, and I remember I had to like hold a bandage on it, and we went for a drive, and that was all.
That sounds like so much fun. I have to say, when I was in Young Women's, I was often so jealous of all my brothers that got to go on scout camps all the time.
All the young women in our ward were jealous of us too.
Yeah, not even fair. How come girls don't get to go on so many campouts? Probably because they whine and complain and they're girly.
That makes sense.
Still, I wasn't one of those. I wanted to go, and they always said no.
I think there's 2 reasons why the girls didn't go on as many campouts. Number 1, like you said, they whine and complain in periods.
Periods? And then that's number 1, they whine and complain in periods.
And number 2, the leaders probably didn't really want to go either.
And that's the truth. I think that is what really
Because
is.
a lot of the leaders were women that probably had kids and couldn't go on an overnight as easily as a husband who's typically gone working anyway.
I think that's right. Plus, think about how women pack versus how men pack. Women pack like they're moving into the woods. Men pack like they aren't going anywhere. And they cross their fingers and hope they'll survive.
That reminds me, there was one time I was on a camp out. It was the middle of the summer, and in Florida, of course, super hot. So I was like, I'm not going to bring my sleeping bag. I'm just going to bring a sheet.
That is dumb. Sorry.
Because at home, in my bed, I only slept with a sheet every single night.
Wow.
And so I was like, I don't need more than this. So I brought a sheet, and I remember I was so cold that night.
Okay, this is exactly why you need me. You need me because you would die.
You are my common sense.
You would die. This is how our relationship works. When we get ready to pack for something, he's like, he waits till 5 minutes before, and then he's like, I'm all packed. I just packed. It took me 5 minutes. I'm packed. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like on my 3rd hour of packing or something like that. And he's like, you are taking so long. We need to go. And I'm like, okay, just wait. I have a few more things to grab. And he's like, you don't need it. Let's just go. Just leave it. You don't need that. Why do you need that? Let's go. Let's just go. And I'm like, ah. And then finally I'm all packed. We get in the car. And of course, I could probably count just like every time we go, he's like, why didn't you bring sunscreen? What? Do you have sunscreen? And usually I have it, but it's almost always like, why didn't you bring this? Why didn't you bring that? And it's always me that's supposed to grab these things that you need.
That's funny because I remember being like, oh, wow, you brought this. That was smart. Good job. Thanks for bringing it. Hey, I didn't know you brought this. That's so helpful at this moment. Like being thankful. Like, yes, it takes you 3 days to pack, but I'm always grateful that you do because you always bring all the great things.
Most of the time he just says, it's okay. If we don't have it, we'll just buy it when we go there. We'll just buy it later.
The other half of the time we get back from the trip and we're putting things away and I'm like, I didn't know you brought this. I haven't seen this the whole trip because it never got taken out of the pack.
No.
It happens.
But very rarely. And aren't you glad I brought it?
I am glad.
It's like an emergency kit. And he's like, oh, we didn't even need this. Why did we bring this?
Yeah, right.
It's like the extra food that we didn't eat.
You're making me sound like a horrible person. And you know it's exaggerated.
I know.
It's not.
But it is an exaggeration of the truth.
That's true.
Well, for me, I was jealous that the boys got to go on campouts. I always wanted to go. And nobody ever really camped in my family outside of like church campouts.
We need to do more campouts, not RV, but like real camp.
It's hard, man.
And that's why the young women don't go on campouts.
That is why. It's hard. Well, you know what? I realized I loved camping out without kids.
It is fun without kids.
It is fun. But with kids, it is stinking hard.
And that's why the young women don't go camping, because they're basically just a bunch of kids in the woods. Whining,
no, I feel like
deodorant.
It would be so different if I didn't have any kids with me and I went out with the girls' camp. Like now, I would want to do that. I think that would be really fun. But if I had to bring a baby with me, I pretty much nixed that. I was like, I think the last time we did it was a few years ago, and it was at a family reunion, and just like the anxiety it brings me knowing that we don't have like a warm heater next to a baby to keep them warm through the night. And the thought of having like an air mattress and holding them,
it takes all the fun out, right?
And like, yeah, it takes all the fun out because it's all worry for me. I'm like, oh, they're gonna die. Like, so and in Utah, even in the summer, it can get bitter cold at night. So it's like,
so we have
it's not fun if you have a baby. Like, that's why we have the RV. That is why.
That's the only way.
And that's because, like, even if it got bitter cold at night, which we have had that happen in the RV where the heater hasn't turned on, it's still 10 times better than a tent.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it still holds heat, you know?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I used to go camping all the time. I think our goal when I was in Young Men's was every month to have one camp out.
I remember that being, except it was only during the summer that happened here in Utah.
We did it year
the summer
round,
and
baby.
one other camp out during the middle of the winter, and it was called the Klondike, and they would dig snow caves. Did you ever do that?
We didn't call it the Klondike, but we did do a snow, like a winter camping one time.
Was it fun?
We actually drove,
or was it miserable?
It was terrible. So we actually drove up. It was funny because we had to do it for like a merit badge or something. So we drove up to North Carolina, I think, or Virginia, and from Florida. We drove up and we stayed at a cabin the first night, and we were going to do like skiing and snowboarding.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. And for us Floridians, it was like, I'd never seen snow, you know.
Snow?
So we drove all the way up there, and the first night we stayed...
Oh, no.
We stayed at a cabin. I have to tell you guys this story. So... Sometimes I'm like, where were our leaders during all of this?
Yes. I think if the young women leaders or if any of the other people, adults, women in church would have known just how reckless and crazy it got, they probably would have had a fit.
So we were at this cabin in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods.
That sounds fun.
Being from Florida, it was like... Especially from the city, it was like creepy, middle of the woods. Like this is the.
That's true. Where you grew up, it was like, I mean, around you there was like orchards and stuff, but you were in the city.
Yeah, and so here we are up in the mountains, in the woods, in a cabin, in literally the middle of nowhere, so dark you can see the stars, and we're like all these city boys, and we're like, this is like this is the perfect location for like a murder movie, and of course, I don't know. We watched the movie Psycho. And so
they had the movie Psycho on your scout camp.
It was on the TV, either on cable or somehow we were watching Psycho, and all the boys were watching it, and it was like freaking them all out. And the leaders think it's funny, so they go outside and they start. So it's actually smart. They take the flashlight from inside the building and they shine the flashlight on the car reflectors, and so the reflector starts brightly, flickering outside of the cars. And so we're like, hey, there's a light outside, there's somebody outside. And all the boys start freaking out. And so we're like all out the window, like seeing these lights moving around. This is the
perfect situation where as a kid, you don't realize like how much trouble adults are making. The adults, and they're thoroughly enjoying it.
Oh, yeah.
And doing mean things, but it's like you don't even realize you're just kind of like going through this situation, right? But like as an adult, you look back and go, those leaders!
Naughty.
You know,
Yeah.
But it's really funny at the same time. And I think it's funny because we're adults and we do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And then actually, I think there was a leader outside walking with a flashlight. And anyway, all of us boys were losing our minds over this terror that was gripping all of us.
Did you know I've never seen Psycho?
I don't know if I've seen it since.
I don't really want to see it either.
It's just about murder and killing.
Sounds scary.
At least that's what I remember.
What's so ironic about that story, though?
It's not over yet.
What's so ironic about that story, though?
I haven't finished telling it.
Is that the guy who I dated in high school, he also watched Psycho at Young Men's at the church building, though. He watched it for an activity when probably also the Young Men's leaders weren't even there. Anyways, I just think it's funny that both of you guys watched it at church activities. I've never even seen it. Anyways, continue.
So, thank you. So all the boys were losing their minds. They were freaking out, panic attacks left and right. And at this point, the leaders are like, okay, guys, it's time to go to bed.
How old were you?
On this trip, I was probably 15 or 16, something like that.
What were the youngest that were there?
12.
12, watching Psycho alone in the woods. Aww.
So we turn off the TV. Everybody's going to bed, but the boys are still like freaked out of their mind. And so they're all panicking like that they're going to get murdered in their sleep for some reason. So they start going into the kitchen and grabbing knives. And they're planning on going to sleep with a knife clutched closely to their chest in case someone tries to attack them or scare them in the night.
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? So dumb.
So dumb.
So we all go up these stairs of this creepy old cabin. It'd be cool to go back to this cabin, actually. We walk up the stairs in this creepy old cabin, and there's like 3 bedrooms with big old beds, and there's like 4 or 5 kids on each bed.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot of kids.
Kind of weird. I don't know. But so we're all like cuddled together in these beds, half of the boys holding knives, and it's like pitch black.
This is the stupidest thing ever.
Even in the moment, I was like, you guys are being so stupid right now. You should not be having knives going to bed. Someone's going to get stabbed.
See, this is where me, as like, if I was in your exact situation, I would not have hesitated at all to be like, leaders, come take care of this. Like, I'm totally tattling. No remorse whatsoever either. And I don't care what they say. I don't want them to die, and I don't want to die. You know? When
all the lights were turned off in the house was so dark. I specifically remember putting my hand in front of my face and not being able to see my hand because it was so pitch. Like, I've never been in a place that dark, but like in the middle of a cave or something with all the lights off.
Wow.
Anyway, so as we're laying in bed trying to fall asleep, everybody's still kind of freaking out. All of a sudden, as I'm drifting off to slumberland, I hear the most earth-shattering, piercing, girly scream I've ever heard in my entire life.
Wow.
And I was like, someone just died. That was all I could think in my mind was, it happened. Somebody got stabbed and now they're dead. And I think that was probably one of my friends. So I'm convinced that one of my friends is dead now. And there's a commotion. You know, everyone's kind of in a panic. Oh no, somebody's dead. Or, oh no, there's a bad guy in the house and we have to all go and kill him.
The lights back on.
So they turn the lights on. Everybody runs downstairs. And I look around the corner and my best friend is on the floor, like crying at the bottom of the stairs, just like sobbing like he's dying.
Oh no.
Like, oh. And I'm like, did somebody die? Is somebody dead? And come to find out, he's been in the bathroom, trying to go to the bathroom. And I think that he heard some people outside the door.
Did the leaders know you watched Psycho?
Honestly, I don't even remember where the leaders were with all of this. For all I know, they were in another cabin, you know. Like, I don't even remember. But I remember he was at the floor crying, and he ended up telling us what happened. And this is the part that's a little bit fuzzy. I don't remember, but I think he was in the bathroom, like going potty or something. And all of a sudden, like somebody starts knocking on the door or like scratching on the window outside. And he's like, guys, come on, this isn't funny or whatever. And they keep doing it. And he's like, leave it, stop it. This isn't funny, guys. I know it's you. And then I think they turned off, like, I think they opened the door and like turned off the light or something. And he's like, turn it back on. And they didn't do it. And so he got like freaked out and started screaming.
That's all?
He's a little bit of an emotional, kind of overreacting type person. Anyway.
Whisper who it is.
I'm not going to say it.
Do you know? I thought that's who it was.
He tended to overreact in general. So.
And I just don't want to say it on here because I don't want anybody else to like feel bad.
I don't think he listens to our podcast, but if any of his family members did, they'd probably know who it was. But yeah, anyway, it was so one of those situations where I was like, this is so dumb. Like, yeah. Why are we taking knives to bed? But anyway, it was kind of a funny story.
Did everybody put their knives away or did they sleep with their knives?
I think at that point they probably put their knives back.
I hope so.
Like everyone was like, okay,
honestly,
I think that was when the leaders got involved because they were like, okay, we've had enough of the drama, of the stupid boys that are just being dumb. Like, put the knives away. Like, this isn't going to happen, you know?
So funny.
I just remember that it was like some stupid reason why he absolutely like blew a gasket and started freaking out.
That's hilarious.
Good. That's one of my favorite camping memories. And then I remember we did a couple times. We went up to Camp Rainy Mountain in Georgia.
Camp Rainy Mountain.
And that was my favorite camp. We'd go there. I did twice, 2 different summers. We went there for a whole week, and we did a whole bunch of merit badges.
That's fun.
And just like tons of fun hanging out with my friends.
Oh, let's talk about the bad stuff you did.
So I went skinny dipping once.
That's what I was thinking about.
On a camp out. We were at Wekiva Springs in Apopka, Florida. And it was...
I didn't know you could stay the night there.
They have some camping sites.
Okay.
And one night, so we were all the boys, we were at a camping site. And it was late. We always stayed up as late as possible. The goal was to try to stay up all night. But one night... I
did that.
It was probably 11 p.m., pitch dark. Everybody was asleep. We waited till the leaders were asleep.
Of course.
And we snuck out of our tent. And there was probably 10 or 15 of us boys. We all snuck. And we walked... It was a long walk, too, because we were camping at the campsite, so it was a long walk to the springs. The springs were closed. Like, there was nobody there but security guards. And so we're, like, making sure that nobody sees us.
Make sure somebody's going to be on guard from the security guards.
So we walk to the springs, and we all go swimming in, like, the middle of the night. And I think one person was like, oh, I'm going to go skinny dipping. And so then they took off their shorts. And then everybody's taking off their shorts. And everybody, like, I'm pretty sure at least 75% or 80% of all these boys and me were skinny dipping. And there was a couple of kids that were a little shy and didn't want to. Mm-hmm. But I just remember it was a great ton of fun. It was so dark.
Didn't you say everybody was like, stay away from me, stay away from me, don't get too close.
Yeah, that's too close.
Get away.
Don't touch me there. You know? Even though nobody was touching them.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, like.
Stop touching me. Like, yeah, I can totally imagine like, kids screaming that just to be funny.
Just to be funny. Anytime there's like a power outage, stop touching me. You know? Even though no one's touching you. But that's just the kind of stuff we would do.
That's teenage boys for you.
And then I think
now looking at teenage kids, like,
I don't think my mom even knows about this.
I swear there's at least one confession in every episode.
That's the only reason she listens. She wants to hear the dirty secrets I never said.
We'll hear it from her later. No, I'm just kidding. It's so interesting listening to teenage kids, girls and boys, because they have no filters.
Yeah.
Like, I really actually enjoy sitting at church and just kind of like listening to the conversations they have, because it's like, whoa, like every single thing is like drama.
I mean, not only as a teenager did we have no filter, but we would intentionally say things to get a reaction out of people, even if it wasn't true or it was a total exaggeration. Yeah. So I think that just makes it even worse.
See, this is why it's a good thing I met him after he was a teenager.
You might not have liked me in my wild years.
I think I would have liked you.
You would have intimidated me. I would have been too afraid of you.
You had to go on a mission and gain confidence before you could talk to me. Is that how it is?
And I had to sweep you off your feet, or you would have been like, "Oh, he's old news."
I would not have been like, "Oh, he's old now."
You were only interested in me because I was new and exotic from another place. Like, oh, he's from Florida. Forget all these country boys.
It was definitely not that. It was, oh, I like the last name Beach.
Let's get married.
Just kidding.
That's it. That was the only reason.
That's so funny. The most like rebellious thing. Actually, I kind of did some rebellious things when I was on campouts.
Now it's your turn to confess.
Okay, it's my turn to confess.
Confess away.
So, we went to youth conference. Yeah, youth conference. I almost forgot the name of it.
Naughty.
I know, right? Just kidding. I went to youth conference, and I'm just trying to think of what things I want to say.
Tell it all. I told about skinny dipping. Now you gotta.
There was one time I had a swimsuit that went down really far, and I was at youth conference, and this one guy gave me a hug that never ever was like around me, and somebody took a picture of it, and I had that picture for a long time, but I only realized afterwards that it was like so immodest, and I didn't even like it just went down. It went like wide and low. And I think I just kept pulling it up or something like that to make it feel more modest. And it was like the only swimsuit I had or something. So anyways, I remember thinking, I wonder if that guy only was interested because of the swimsuit I was wearing. I remember thinking that afterwards. But that really has nothing to do with anything.
I want to hear the confession.
The confession. Okay, we got up in the middle of the night during youth conference, and was it
just girls or boys and girls?
Boys and girls. All the girls obviously were in. It was like weird. It was one of the weirdest campouts I've ever been on. It was basically in a dirt parking lot, like that was kind of in the woods-ish. It was like off a freeway.
I camped out in a retention pond one time.
What?
There was no water in it.
Why? When?
It was just during Young Men's one time.
That's weird. They're like, well, this spot looks pretty good enough. Okay, let that. Okay.
It was like in the backyard of one of the leaders' houses. Retention ponds are all over the place in Florida for when there's flooding. And so there was just this huge retention pond, and it was full of grass. And it was just kind of
spot, actually.
Yeah, and so we just camped out there in the retention pond.
But it was like this super dusty, dirty dirt parking lot, and they had all of the girls on one side and all the boys on one end of the parking lot. But in the middle of the night, after the leaders went to bed, all the girls were like, "We should go and listen to what the boys are saying in their tents." Because they totally talk like that. Just kidding. And we were all like, okay, that sounds fun. I think we brought a roll of toilet paper, like we were going to toilet paper their tent or something, which wouldn't have been very cool because it just would have been on the outside of their tent, like not even cool. But anyways, everybody was curious and everybody was like, okay. So we snuck over and we were all excited. And then we heard one of the boys saying some things, and they were talking about the girls. And they said some really, really naughty stuff. And it was specifically about this friend that was with me. And she got really offended and really mad. And we threw the roll of toilet paper at their tent. And they screamed a little. And then we went back to our tent, and that was all that we did. It was very anticlimactic, except for the rest of the night, that girl was just like, I cannot believe he said that. I cannot believe he said that. And she was just freaking out about what he said. And it was just something bad.
Didn't you say the next day she was like flirting with him a lot?
Yes. And I was like, are you serious? Why are you flirting with him? You were so mad at him.
Maybe in the inside
so
she's
dumb.
like, hee.
Oh, that means he loves me. I don't know, but it was Drama.
You're just jealous that he didn't say that about you.
No, I am happy he did not say that about me. I would have probably done something about it, which would have been included. Just all the men it seemed like all of the guys in the ward just didn't like me at all. Probably because I would tell them off if they did things I didn't like. Like I did not hold back.
Did they like Andrew and Ryan?
No.
Then maybe they didn't like your whole family.
It was probably my whole family. My family is different. They weren't like anybody else I knew, and so I guess it just rubs people wrong sometimes. And I'm not going to apologize for it because I love my family.
I liked you even more when I met your family. I think
you met my family
awesome.
before you met me.
I know. And then I was like, this is a cool family. And then I met you.
I guess I could marry this family.
That's basically what happened. I get you and everything that goes with it.
Oh, it's funny.
So,
and another thing that we did. Yes, this one was probably more trouble. I got in a lot. I didn't get in a lot of trouble because the leaders actually put me up to it. But it was when I was older. I was probably 17, so like 16 or 17. But I was one of the older girls in the group, and the leaders, some of the sneaky ones that were my friends, were like, "Hey, go steal the other ward's mascots and hide them," because we had it was in a big girls camp, and they had lots of different wards there, tons of different wards, tons of different camps, and they had, I think they just had little dolls or something that were POWs, called persons of worth, but really we made them prisoners of war. But that's from my leaders. My leaders were like, "You guys should go steal those POWs from all the other camps and hide them." So in the middle of the night, with me and a couple other girls, it might have just been me and one other. But anyways, we started sneaking around to all the different camps. Mind you, this is hundreds of girls. This is, or maybe over 100. I don't know. It was a lot of people. But we snuck around and we stole them from each camp, and then we hid it in an old latrine area far up the mountain, hid all of them in a pile and covered them with brush, and then we went to bed. And in the morning, it was chaos. All of the different wards started going crazy, and they were blaming each other, and they were getting angry, and they all thought it was the youth leaders, which were the oldest, so the 18-year-olds and stuff. They started doing really mean things to them. I remember one of them, and it was the younger girls that were like, "Get him!" But they literally, I was like, okay, this has gone too far. And it was just during one day.
And this is why the girls don't go on more camp out.
They were like, "No pranks. You cannot pull any pranks." Yeah, this is probably why, because it got vicious. But
cat fights, remember we talked about that?
But this, I did feel really bad about this, but I stepped in and I was like, "Don't do this, guys. Stop it. This is not a good idea." But it was some of the younger girls actually duct taped one of the older girls to a tree.
Killer,
They weren't saying killer, but they're like, "Give us our POW." And she's like, "I don't have it." And I was like, "What is happening?" And they pretended to hold a girl over the fire. And she was like, "Don't stop." And they were just like, "Tell us where it is." It became real POW stuff. I was like, "Stop right now. Don't do that. Guys, leave them alone." They didn't. And I felt so guilty because it was all my fault. So I went to the leaders and I was like, "This is what's happening." And they were just like, "Oh no." And we were all kind of freaking out. And then somebody found it in the woods. They were scouring the woods to just find it, and somebody found them. And I was like, whew. You
dodged a bullet.
We dodged a big bullet. But I think they only grabbed one of them. maybe we'd hid them in different places or something. So that night we snuck into all the camps again and put them all back. And it soothed everybody. But I remember being like, I was feeling so bad. I felt so horrible. I was like, this is the worst thing. I did not mean for all this to happen. I'm going to set it straight. But I was like, it was one of those situations where I was like, I can't tell them I did this. If I tell them I did this, they're going to kill me. I will be lynched. I just couldn't. I was like, I can't tell them. They'll hurt me.
So did they never find out?
I never told anybody.
Wow.
So if you're from my old ward and you're listening to this, don't come for me.
I think I see somebody right now. Just
They're
kidding.
coming for me. I gotta go.
I can't go back to jail.
I can't go back to jail.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, did you do anything that epic on your campouts?
I remember.
What's the most trouble you ever got in on campouts? Down in the bottom of his brain.
A vague memory is returning to my mind.
Blocked it from his memory.
I did. Oh.
I actually almost couldn't remember that story, but as I started telling it, it like came back to me.
Oh my goodness. I think,
What
okay.
did
all
you
right.
do? What did you
So-
do? Have you ever told it to me before?
I don't think so.
If you buried it
So-
in your brain, I bet you haven't told me.
When I was
this
younger,
is exciting for me. I want to hear.
I was very obedient. I always listened to my leaders. My
Me
leaders
too.
were awesome.
Me
I
too.
loved my leaders. And I was always a good boy. As I got older, the new leaders that replaced the old ones weren't as good, in my opinion. They were a little bit more controlling and strict.
They probably heard about knives and
So-
skinny dipping and
So-
all of that
Are
thing.
you gonna let me tell the story?
Sure. Love you. You know you love me. You know.
So anyway, I was probably 16 or 17. I was one of the older boys, and all the younger ones looked up to me. I was friends with all the younger boys, and I really didn't like something that one of the leaders was doing.
What was he doing?
He was making us get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning and go run a mile.
Oh, you done it now.
He messed with my sleep. And there might have been some other things. I don't remember. But basically, I staged a mutiny with all the boys against the leader. And I instigated it. And I basically rallied the troops and said, boys, this isn't going to happen. We don't agree with this. And it was like a huge conflict between all the young men and the leaders.
Whoa.
It was all because of me.
It's a mutiny. What happened?
We
Did you
won.
have to do it? You didn't have to do it because he
Nope.
threw a fit?
Yeah.
What?
But I also remember I got in really big trouble
From your mom and dad or from...
the leaders. They basically said, like, I got taken apart from everybody else, and they're like, you need to stop. Don't do this anymore. If you guys really don't want to do the mile, we won't do it. But you need to make sure that you get along. And
listen to us.
It really humbled me, and
Yeah.
I apologized sincerely. And after that, I was chummy with the leaders.
Yeah.
And also then I was, I took all the boys and I basically said, okay, we're going to do what they say and we're going to be respectful, and changed everything. But I remember there was a couple hours there where I was like, dang, I'm going to die. They're going to kill me. Like, it was crazy.
That's so
I
funny.
had a lot of influence.
Yeah, you
I had a lot of
apparently you did.
power.
I just remembered there was only one leader that I didn't get along with, and it was only during girls' camp for a week, because girls' camp is a few days, but like 4 days or something. But it was the same situation. It was like taking all the fun out of girls' camp, because all they wanted us to do was like it was kind of like merit badges, but cross things off, like our list of things we needed to learn. Like, you need to tie all these knots, and you need to learn how to do triage, and you need to learn how to do campfire, bow drill, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, it was when I was starting to get a little bit older, and I hadn't crossed off or accomplished most of the things in my book. And it was kind of the same as like how I didn't do all my personal progress, but I was still a very good person, and I was still trying to learn these things. Anyways, it was like I was there to have fun at girls' camp, and I was doing good things, and I was having a good time, and I was accomplishing some of those things. But like, she came to me and was like, "You haven't done most of your stuff, so I'm going to work with you personally, and you're going to be working on this the whole time." And I was like, I don't want to do this. I was so upset. And I was like at the age where I could become like a youth leader, or I could be in the ward, and the lady was in the ward. So I was like, I'm going to be a youth leader. I'm running away. Like, I'm not going to do this. It was really frustrating to me. But I think I did a little bit with her, and then I was just like, I'm going to go hang out with the other leaders. And I told the other leaders what was going on, and they were like, just hang out with us. You'll be fine. So I just didn't do it. But it really frustrated me too. Just like, I obviously didn't want to do what she was forcing me to do. And it was really forceful. And I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to spend all my time doing this. Or girls camp this year, we only get to do it one time a year. Like one girls camp. And I was like, it's going to be horrible this year if I do that. So I don't want to do that. I just didn't do that.
Cool. I remember another story that I got in really big trouble for. We were driving up to Camp Rainy Mountain.
Oh, we have opened a bucket of worms. Pandora's box is just keeps coming.
You told me to search my memory, and I found a couple ideas. Memory. So I had just come home from being in Oregon with my grandpa, and I watched a movie with my cousin that my grandpa highly recommended called Jackie Chan and the Legend of the Drunken Master.
Ooh.
Which is actually rated R. But I didn't know that before I watched the movie, so I watched it with my cousin.
Is it rated R, like, for violence?
Mm-hmm.
But not for anything else?
Nope.
Because I was like,
just violence.
I've seen it, and it's not a bad movie.
It's not. So we watched the whole thing, and I was like, wow, this is a really good movie. Probably my favorite Jackie Chan movie ever. At the time was my mentality, and now it definitely is my favorite Jackie Chan movie ever. Yeah. But I took
I think the rating system was different back then.
Right.
A little bit.
I took the VHS home with me. And I kept it because my grandpa said I could have it, and I watched it on the way to that camp out. We were in my friend's car, and they had a TV and a VHS player inside of his car. And as we were driving to the camp, we watched that movie, and all the boys liked it. I thought it was a great movie. And
How old were you?
I was probably 15.
Okay.
But after the camp out was over, one of the leaders found out that we had just watched a rated R movie on a Boy Scout trip with our church. And when we got home from camp...
What about Psycho? Isn't that rated R?
I don't know. But anyway, they told my dad and my parents, and my dad got really mad at me for bringing the movie and watching it with all the boys. And he said I had to go tell the bishop, and I had to confess and say sorry to everybody, and I got in really big trouble.
I feel like that was overreacting, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I mean, if they knew the movie, they might be like, oh, it's not that bad. But just the fact that it was like a rated R movie, and it was because of me on a church endorsed activity, like that's a no-no just in general.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the movie shouldn't be rated R. It was. And therefore, it wasn't okay. Anyway.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. Needless to say, I never did that again.
Rough. Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
You're like, guys, I have the best movie. Gotta see it. It's my favorite movie. And
so,
like, yeah.
I remember another story.
I have to say something, though.
I got grounded for an entire summer.
From that?
No, for a different thing I was about to tell you.
Oh, I think I know this one.
Can I tell it?
First, I have to say something. I think it's really frustrating as a kid or as a teenager or whatever, at any point when you do something innocently thinking it's going to be fine. And then the reaction you get from all the people around you is like, what are you doing? That makes me feel the most horrible I've ever felt in my whole life. Because I never really, because every kid does that. Every kid does something like that, where they make a mistake and they didn't really think something through, and everybody has a horrible reaction. And, I was the type of kid that all you needed to tell me was, oh, you probably shouldn't do that. And I would be like, oh, I'm so sorry. But to get a reaction like, what are you doing? That, killed me. It was like the most horrible thing ever. And so like, I don't know, every now and then I see my kids have the same thing happen.
Sometimes I get after you for doing something bad and you don't get upset and
That's
sorry.
because it's you. I'm not
You go
scared
like
of
this.
you.
But you love me, don't you? I'm still cute, right?
It's because you do love me and I am cute.
And I'm like, you just did a really, really annoying thing that really, really makes me upset.
But it's not a bad thing.
It's a bad thing. And you're like,
Okay, I think that's how I've learned to deal. Because as a kid, I couldn't have done that and
probably
been
did it
successful.
anyway.
I would have been like bawling my eyes out. If I was a kid and you still told me those things, I would bawl my eyes
okay,
out.
I have another confession of
learned.
my youth of how bad I was as a kid.
Oh my.
So
Confessions of a Teenage Michael Drama Queen. No, just kidding.
So we were on like a young men's youth conference, and we went out to the church ranch in Florida, and we were camping out. It was the first day of this camp, and it was a week-long camp. And so we were all there, and we were all together, and we had all of our tents, and all of a sudden there was a really big storm, and it was like raining really hard and blowing really hard, and tents were getting blown into the trees. It was like
Nobody was in the trees?
It was like a
or
hurricane.
They were in the trees.
Nobody was in the tents, or else it wouldn't have lifted them up. But I remember they were like, all the leaders were like, everybody go to the rodeo grounds, find shelter. And it was like a huge
Whoa.
storm. And then I remember some people saw tornadoes like off
Whoa.
coming close to our camp. But like there was this entire field full of tents. And by the end of the storm, all the tents were gone and they were all up in the trees.
Whoa.
And
I don't know if I've ever heard this.
And I remember going with my group, and everyone's like, okay, make sure everybody's here. Like, okay, do we have everybody? They're like doing the head count, right?
Went and found shelter.
Where's so-and-so? Oh, no, where are they? They're still in their tent. Somebody go get them. And so they ran back and got this kid who was still inside of his tent, like alone or whatever, scared.
Whoa.
And so like they got him, and everybody's like in the bleachers of the rodeo
this is
grounds.
Florida. That's not a problem we would have had in Utah. It's just not. But a problem we had in Utah was like we camp out and then it snows. And we're frozen in the morning. We're freezing cold anyways.
So we're all it's like multi-stake. So there's like hundreds and hundreds of boys.
Whoa.
And we're all in between the bleachers at the rodeo grounds that are like solid. Like these are made out of bricks. They're solid. They're not going anywhere. It's like the only shelter in the whole area. And anyway, they basically said, everybody, there's a huge storm. Like we're not going to be able to stay here. Go home. Everybody go home tonight. We'll reconvene tomorrow. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, my parents aren't expecting me back till the end of the week. So I'm just going to go to my friend's house for the night, and then we'll hang out there and then, reconvene or whatever. So we packed up all of our tents, and I went to one of my friend's houses, and we were staying the night at his house. The next day we got up, we're just playing video games, hanging out. There's 4 or 5 of us boys that had all kind of sloughed the rest of the camp. Meanwhile, the rest of the camp is back together again, somewhere else, some other location, and we didn't go. And then I get a phone call from my mom. She's like, where are you?
Well, how would you know? Oh, you have a cell phone.
Yeah, I had a cell phone.
Okay.
And I'm like, it can't.
He done it now. He done it now.
And she's like, no, you're not. And I was like, crap. So apparently the leaders of the camp had called home to all the boys, letting everybody know what was going on. And my mom and dad were like, he never came home, right?
That would be horrifying as a parent.
So that's why she called me. And then I'm like, crap, I'm at my friend's house. They're like, you were supposed to go back to the camp. I know, I'm sorry. You have to come home now. So I had to come home. I didn't get to go back out to camp, and I got grounded for an entire summer.
Wow.
I got in really big trouble.
That stinks. But I mean, I do not blame your parents.
Let's just say I learned my lesson with that one. I had to learn everything the hard way. Because as a teenager, I made all the wrong choices.
I swear, all of the things that I did that were wrong, I would tell my mom, and she'd be like, okay.
Well, because it was
okay. You're
I
fine.
stole their dolls. That's like the worst thing you ever did as a young woman. It's not like you ditched your camp to go stay at a friend's house and then lie to your parents.
I would be in big trouble for that.
Yeah, seriously. So I deserved every punishment that I got. But I remember at the time, all my friends were like, your mom's mean. Like, you don't deserve it. They were all on my side, you know.
But didn't they get in trouble too?
No.
Really?
It was their house, so of course.
Oh. Yep.
My other friends probably got in trouble, but it wasn't as bad as what I got.
Yeah.
They just expected me to be respectful and obedient, and I didn't do it. And anyway, that never happened again.
With me and my mom, I would tell my mom every single thing I could possibly. It was a very similar relationship that we have. Like, with no fear of me looking bad, I would just tell her what I did.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the difference. Because all growing up, I'd never wanted to be at home.
Yeah.
Like, literally, it didn't matter what it was. If there was an opportunity to leave home for anything, even if it was going and mowing my best friend's yard, like cleaning their house, washing the dishes, I would do anything I could to not be at home.
Yeah.
Just because it was not fun to be at home. Like,
I
had no friends. I had nothing fun to do. Like, I would escape in my room and read books for hours just to get out of being at home and to escape in my mind.
Aww.
Just because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun for me.
Yeah.
And
you're making it sound like it's horrible. There was good things to it too, but you just were a rebellious teenager.
Maybe. I mean, I worked. I felt like anytime I was at home, I was always working.
Yeah.
I was having to clean the house. I was having to take care of my siblings. I was having to do school. And it was like, the only relief that I got that was fun for me at home was being able to play video games. And even that was like, I didn't get to play that much because as soon as I'd get caught playing video games, I was made to go clean the yard or, I don't know, do some type of work. And anyway, it wasn't bad. Like, there was nothing dangerous or like bad at home. It just wasn't enjoyable for me.
It just wasn't fun because you wanted to play.
Yeah.
But you were made to work and do responsible things that you didn't want to do.
Exactly. Does that sound familiar? Have you seen any of our children?
But I don't want our kids to like not want to be home. Like all while you're talking, I'm like, how can we not have our kids be worried or like not worried, but like, how can we make our kids want to also be here? Because I don't want them to like never want to come visit when we're older. You know, like I want them to be around.
Well, that's
around and like.
That's the thing, though. Everything's changed when I became an adult.
Yeah.
Like it almost was like it was almost overnight.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah, because we've gone way over on this one.
So we'll talk more about that another time.
Let's do the next one. Let's talk about that on the next one.
No, I got like a lot more of my teenage years. Okay,
write it down so you got like you have a.
I do. I have it right there. Becoming an adult. It's coming up soon.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got some more fun life experiences. I just like life was hard as a teenager.
Yeah.
I made all the wrong choices. I brought it upon myself. I really did.
You can only say that now looking back. You would have never said that
and
as
in the
a
moment
teenager.
it was hard, but I think every life lesson is hard until you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I've accepted that life is difficult and I'm no longer fighting against that trial. Like I was always fighting against the difficulty and like butting heads with it. And now I just accept that life is hard and that's okay. And I'm just going to work hard and it'll be good.
You'll make it through.
Right. But at the time I was just like, no, I hate it. Fight. Right.
Yeah.
So you just have to accept it and like, okay, I'm going to be the better person.
You know, I think James, and I'm not saying anything bad about James, but I think he has a lot of the same like temperament as you as a teenager.
Totally. I see him and I'm like, that's me. Because he struggles with the same things I struggled with. He has the same attitude. And that's why we just
need to look at like, what would you have wished could have been life for you back then?
I am currently doing for him what I wish had been done for me.
Okay.
But it's not working. We'll see. I mean, he's still young, so it'll work out. But anyway. That was Young Men's. That was camping. I didn't even cover a lot of the camps. We did 2 canoe trips, 2 different summers. We did 2 whitewater rafting trips, 2 different summers. Those were just super fun. Nothing specific about them that was like, oh my gosh, you have to hear the story, but just good times.
Oh yeah, that just reminds me of
I'd
2
love.
others. 2 that I also forgot.
You got 30 seconds. And we're done.
No, the 2 that I had was I went on 4th year hike, which was so fun. And it was the first time I was with on a hike it was a backpacking hike. And it was just one night overnight. But we hiked for
10
maybe
seconds.
10 miles. Shh, stop. Wait.
4.
Just stop it and start it again.
This is going too long.
Let me finish. So we went on a 4th year hike and we backpacked and we actually drank water from a spring, that's the only time I've ever done that in real life. And we put our tent on a hill. We pitched our tent on a hill. And that was a mistake. I've never done that since. And that was the only time I ever did it. And that was a mistake because it was so uncomfortable, number 1, because we were all sliding into each other. And number 2, when we woke up, the bottom of the tent was literally on my face. And as I was breathing, it was going up and down. But you know what? That was one of the funnest campouts I've ever had because it was with my friends that are still my friends today, and it was like the first time being around them, and it was lots of candy, lots and lots of candy. It was like we had to carry that in, but it was worth it. And in the morning,
was it like heavyweight style, or it was like all strapped to you underneath your
no, but
smuggled?
That's a good idea. And then the other one was I think this was my favorite trip I've ever been on, still to this day, and it was a whitewater rafting trip where we all were in boats and there was very few rapids, but we went over we went for 4 days. It's the most tan I've ever been in my life. Even putting sunscreen on tons every single day. I was so tan because it was just being in the sun every day, all day, rowing like crazy. And we would get to the campsite, and the people that did it with us, they had already set up brought all of our stuff. We would set up our tents, but they had already made dinner at whatever place we got to. And it was just it was like luxury camping, but not. Only luxury because they made us the food. And everything else was just so much fun. That I want to do again. I would totally do that again.
Yeah,
that was so much fun. Okay, that's that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, you guys, for listening to Beach Theory. We love you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And I've got another fun podcast coming next week, so make sure to stay tuned to Beach Theory on YouTube or anywhere you can find podcasts. We'll be there. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.